Check 1, 2. Return to people.
What's happening, everybody? We are back with another Return to People episode. Today's guest is redefining what it means to lead people in an AI-powered world. He's the director of people at Intellistack, where he's mastered the art of balancing performance with humanity, building culture that drives results through empathy and accountability. Accountability and empathy. Look at that. What does trust really look like in a hybrid workplace? Well, he's cracked the code on keeping distributed teams highly engaged and deeply connected to their company's mission. Get ready to learn how AI can amplify human judgment, not replace it, and why authenticity at work is non-negotiable. Please welcome Dustin Hutton-Alcorn. Woo! Settle down, studio audience. Settle down. I'm sorry, Dustin. They keep clapping. They're crazy. Woo! Studio audience, settle down.
They're wild.
Nice to see you again, man. Really, really appreciate you being on the show. How are you doing, bro?
It's a pleasure to be here, Kaleem. Thanks so much. I'm great.
That's awesome, man. I love that. So, Dustin, we've had a wonderful time chatting before, man. Really, really love your vibe. Really love your thoughts. That's why we had you on the show today. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you land where you are today?
Yeah, it's an awesome question, Kaleem. So I'm a director of people with Intellistack. I've been in the people space now for over a decade, and I actually found my footing initially back in people experience and in facilities management. So
Interesting.
It's been an interesting journey transitioning into a more strategic people role within an organization. But being in that space around people experiences allowed me to show up as a very people-centric, people-minded HR practitioner for a business, where I'm able to balance effectively the needs of the business and the needs of the employee to make sure that we're providing best-in-class experiences that benefit both an employee and an employer. So it's been quite the journey so far, but have really enjoyed the journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So where let's get a little bit of your backstory. Where are you based out of? What did you study? And it's interesting that you talked about the facility space. Can you talk a little bit about what you did there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm located just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. So I always joke with our people, if you ever need your fills of Canadianisms like sorries and, don't you knows, you can always hit me up.
Don't you know, eh?
But don't you know? But I initially, like I mentioned, found my base working in the tech side of the industry, working for a Vancouver-based venture studio, coming in initially as an office manager. And before that, had been working with Apple as a preservation and operations specialist in their retail stores. So it was an interesting journey kind of going from there and leaning into this role with this Vancouver-based venture studio. My background in schooling is actually in political science and human rights. So I never thought that I would be, and
it's pretty relevant today.
Same, but different.
It seems pretty relevant today, don't you think? I mean, it definitely seems relevant today. And you are dealing with people. I actually kind of feel like that's probably a decent education to get into the idea of dealing with people, honestly.
Absolutely. I mean, it's same, but different.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I would be working in the HR space, but at the core of who I am as a person, what I love is being able to craft experiences and deliver results that have the human experience at the core of what I do. And whether that's working with a nonprofit or a for-profit organization, I'm able to do the things that fill my cup. So I'm so humbled to be able to do the work that I do and to work with the people that I work with, because like I said, it really is what gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, human-centered. And that's why we're on this show, Return to People. So this is, Dustin, you're going right up our alley right here, bro. I mean, it's making a lot of sense here. So Intellistack, cool name. There's some other things a part of it. Can you first tell us, what is Intellistack? What is it that you all do? And what are the main challenges when people reach out to you, your clients? What are the challenges they're facing and how do you help them solve those challenges?
Yeah, it's an awesome question, Kaleem. So, Intellistack has been around for a minute. we
Okay.
were actually founded back in 2006, and we were originally known as FormSpring back in the day. But we've gone through a couple of evolutions over the years, from FormSpring to FormStack to Intellistack.
Oh yeah.
We love a little reinvention, but we rebranded to Intellistack in the middle of 2025 to coincide with the launch of some new product offerings. And we wanted to make sure that we had a name that reflected the growing breadth and depth of our products and services in the market. So we wanted a name that, did that and was able to effectively demonstrate the intelligent stackable solutions that we're delivering, hence Intellistack. So
Yeah.
in terms of what we do, everything that we are doing at Intellistack is about empowering people, our customers and their customers, to digitize the things that matter most to them, automating their workflows and fixing their broken processes without needing to write code. So everything that we're doing at Intellistack is made for people like me.
Okay. Okay.
And it's allowing organizations to do things like collect data and work with that data in a way that's much more streamlined and integrated. So it's allowing them to digitize experiences for themselves and for their customers, especially in industries that are maybe a little bit more antiquated and have been overly reliant on paper or manual processes in their work. So it's about bringing much easier experiences and much more current and future focused experiences to the market.
Makes sense. I remember FormStack. So that's what I remember. FormStack was pretty popular. I mean, it really developer centric. A lot of us developers used to use FormStack. And I love it when companies, when they reinvent, they kind of keep the basis of the name. Pretty cool idea. Y'all kept the stack part, because I remember FormStack. So Intellistack, really cool name that you all are. Oh, intelligence with the stacks. I mean, well done. Well done.
Totally.
Tell your marketing team they did a good job with the rebrand.
Absolutely. We'll pass that along.
Yeah, good work. Good work out there. So, kind of talking about now the remote employee experience, workplace flexibility at the center of people, tons of return to office emails, tons of return to office stories. Workplace flexibility since 2020 really skyrocketed. When did Intellistack make the decision to embrace workplace flexibility? And what motivated you all to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is not a unique experience to Intellistack. I think industry globally went through that motion in 2020. So, pre-pandemic, we, like a lot of companies, were very much an in-office
No doubt.
centric business, where
Okay.
we were very reliant on, brick and mortar spaces to serve as conduits for connective tissue within our teams and within the business,
Love that.
and to enable collaboration and connection with our people. But obviously, a little something happened in 2019, 2020 that kind of changed the game for everyone. So, and like I mentioned, this is certainly not unique to Intellistack. I think industry, generally speaking, went through this evolution where we realized, one, we needed to pivot, but two, that we could pivot and that change could still be realized post-pandemic. We could still go through that and have that similar experience, but being a little bit more intentional with what that looks like now that we're in a position where we are able to come back together as people, but maybe in a little bit more of a thoughtful and intentional way.
Wow. Okay. So let's unpack some of this a little bit. So what I'm hearing is, just like a lot of companies, you all were in office, really dependent. I love how you use the terminology, using the office to build, did you say conduit of connection? You said something cool. It was really neat. I like that. I don't think I've ever heard that before. So what was it specifically, you think, once we started kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that yes, we could get back to the office? Was there anything from leadership that, you were told or kind of learned about that really put you over the top when it came to making the decision to keep flexibility? Like, do you know what really kind of sparked the shift of, hey, we've been doing this, why not?
Yeah. And again, I think this is not necessarily unique to Intellistack. I think we've seen this across organizations, across industry in the years post kind of the height of COVID-19. But it was the realization that organizations can be just as productive, if not more productive, when they're enabling their staff to show up and do their best work, regardless of where they sit. So I think for us, especially, it was about having that realization that our people could do exactly that and find the benefits for themselves around having greater work-life harmony, being able to do the things that fill their cups where they are in the world, and still making sure that they're able to do great work when they're online and connecting with their teams. So I think, like I said, not unique to Intellistack. I think a lot of businesses were able to see the realized benefit of that. And naturally, we saw a shift where, I think of San Francisco pre-pandemic as like the epitome of what it meant to provide an incredible best-in-class in-office experience, where it was all about the perks and the amenities so that people felt as comfortable as they wanted and needed to feel being in office. And when obviously we weren't able to access that anymore, people were able to realize those benefits in a different way, albeit from the comfort, if you will, of their home office.
Right.
So for us, finding that happy medium has been really important, and making sure that we're able to meet people where they are and supporting them, because ultimately when our people are happy and when they feel good, they're going to deliver their best work.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thunk it? Focus on your people and how they're feeling, and maybe they'll be pretty productive. Who'd have thunk it? I think we've all know this, but so question. With transition, with change, it's always challenges. In your opinion, what has been, out of the remote employee experience, that journey from when they get onboarded to, when they depart, what has been the biggest challenge of that employee experience, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think the challenge for us, and again, not unique, I've experienced this with other companies that I've worked for in this post-pandemic space, is finding the balance, especially in terms of building, as I was mentioning earlier, that connective tissue with people,
Yes.
with this diaspora, if you will, of our staff.
Okay.
Pre-pandemic, organizations had a lot more control and centralization of their staff, staffing around localized hubs.
Okay.
The pandemic obviously saw people fleeing, if you will, from these major hubs. We're talking San Francisco, Austin, Toronto, and moving to places that may be more affordable, more cost effective. But now, post-pandemic, as we're trying to find those moments for connection and intentional collaboration, it can be difficult when you have a team, one team member in isolation who, may be working from Wyoming, or maybe they decided to become a nomad and maybe they're working from elsewhere in the world, but the team, generally speaking, is still somewhat semi co-located within, the same time zone, maybe 1 or 2 hours on either side. So for us, I think the challenge that we're having right now is being able to bring new stackers into the fold and giving them an experience, especially when some of their team members may be very much isolated from the rest of the team and vice versa. So it's shifted our thinking around how and where we're sourcing talent, how, knowing that we are still very much a hybrid workforce, how we can bring ourselves back to these co-located hubs to make sure that, while we don't expect people to be in office 5 days a week, how can we make sure that our people, our teams, and our management are able to effectively deliver work and work collaboratively without overextending, one or two people because they may be in a completely different location from the rest of their team.
Yeah. Hearing you, it's the connection side. It's what I love about this. We're not even talking about productivity because you've already solved it. Like, productivity is we're not even talking about productivity. We're talking about the people side, the connection side, the magic that everyone's talking about that they're missing. And it sounds like, to me, the challenge that you were talking about is the fact that when people are, not co-located in one place, then it's very difficult for you guys to be able to build these opportunities for connective tissue. That's it. That's where it was. I love that. I love connective tissue. I'm going to use that a lot. Because it's human. It makes it more human. That's why I love that phrase. So Dustin, I'm stealing a lot of stuff from y'all. That's the point of this. We knowledge share in the show, and I'll give you credit every time I use it. But you're telling me that it sounds like that has been the challenge. And then on top of that, it's a challenge for new employees. I like that. So onboarding is really important. We all know the first 45 days determines whether they're going to stay or leave. So you just kind of threw this out very very quickly. So the challenge is onboarding and getting people connected more frequently, even with some of your existing employees. And you just kind of threw out hubs. Could you talk about that solution to that challenge that you're talking about? What do you mean by hubs? Because, I'm assuming that there are people in one area that still might have teams fully distributed, but that's not what you're necessarily talking about, are you?
Correct. Yeah. So I'll use our team in Toronto as an example. So shout out to our stackers in Toronto.
Stackers, I love that too.
But
Stackers.
to give you and to give everyone a bit of a clear idea as to how we're currently structured. So we're currently building out a team of technical staff in Toronto. We currently don't have an office footprint in Toronto, but we do take advantage of co-working spaces, when we are wanting to bring the team together.
Okay.
Is there intention to establish a physical footprint in Toronto at some point? Yeah, I think so, especially as we continue to grow and build out our team, because we'd love to be able to have a footprint that is ours, where, our teams can be comfortable coming in. They can leave, if they have a hoodie or a jacket, maybe they've got a favorite water bottle or some effects that they want to keep in their space so that they feel more comfortable coming in. That's important. But until that time where we're in a position to have that footprint, that still means that we need to continue to be really thoughtful and intentional about how and where we're hiring. So for ourselves, as we're building out this hub of staff, we're looking for people that are in a commutable distance to Toronto. So making sure that they're within the greater Toronto area, it's reasonable for them to be able to get into the downtown core or wherever we may have a footprint, and not having to overextend that person in terms of that commute. Now, like I mentioned, we don't have a footprint currently, but we're still wanting to make sure that we have that co-location so that if and when we do decide to open an office, it's easy for them to be able to come in. But until that time, and whether that happens in a month, in a year, we still want to make sure that we're able to build community. So currently the team in Toronto get together organically. They self-organize. So they'll choose a co-working space to work out of, once a week, twice a month. And they'll get together, they'll go grab lunch. They'll go after work and do something social. Maybe they'll go play a rowdy game of bocce. Maybe they'll go cheer and watch a Toronto Maple Leafs game. Although I don't know why anyone would want to go watch a Leafs game. Go Canucks. But it's that opportunity to build the connective tissue. So it's really difficult and can be hard when you've got an incredibly globally disparate team. Of course, I think we all experienced that going through the pandemic and how hard it was to maintain the connections and the sense of camaraderie and fun that you had in a physical in-person office and taking that completely virtual. So for us, it's about finding that happy medium between giving people and allowing people to do their best work where they're most comfortable, but then also making sure that we are able to bring people together when it makes sense.
That's awesome. So to be clear though, like some of the people in one area, they still may have team members in other people hubs. Like the teams are still spread across, but it's not necessarily just about you connecting with just your team members. It's about creating community. So I really love that. I think it's cool that you're not necessarily requiring in these new people hubs. You're not talking about, hey, we have to have an office in that people hub area. It's just, we want to be able to have people in the same area so that they can connect. I really love that. And I really like that concept. So that was a challenge. Sounds like you have a really great solution to that challenge. So kudos. And if you all listening, might want to consider some people hubs. If your people are feeling a little isolated or lonely, come up with some people hubs. We're the people. We can hire people in those hubs. Dustin, flipping it around, what's been your biggest success? What do you think has been the biggest success in this remote employee experience since you all have leaned into being kind of hybrid, remote first type company?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of businesses going through the pandemic would take budget, from in-person connections and, the in-office experience, and they redistributed those budgets to other corners of the organization.
What do you mean? Could you explain that? I think I lost you a little bit on there.
Yeah. So, when you have a physical footprint, obviously you have budget to be able to fund things like snacks and the amenities and those experiences that are being provided to staff in office.
Right.
When, pandemic happened, obviously those experiences weren't happening anymore. So budget inevitably was redistributed or reallocated to other discretionary
Yes.
cost
Okay.
centers in
Yep.
an organization.
Okay.
So for a lot of those organizations, when it came time to allow for people to come back together, they didn't have budget allocation to be
Budget's
able to
gone.
do that.
Yeah.
So
Budget's gone. No more
it became
snacks.
really difficult. Exactly. No, no more snacks, no more unlimited kombucha and cold brew on tap. Like the things that people miss the most. But when it came time to have access to budget where, if a team wanted to get together, that budget had been redistributed or locked into other quarters of the business. So one of the things that's been really crucial for us at Intellistack that's been really beneficial is we've been very thoughtful in partnership with our finance organization around making sure that we have protected, dedicated budget to enable our people to do exactly that, to come together offsite, on-site, to work collaboratively and to make sure that, especially as we are a globally distributed team, of course, we are going to have people in different locations from their teams, and making sure that we can bring those people together to co-work. And, there can be so much benefit getting people in a room and whiteboarding and working through challenges together in person. Of course you can do some great stuff virtually, but sometimes when you just have that in-person connection, it can be that nudge across the last 10 feet, if you will, to see things to completion. So having access to dedicated budget and being much more intentional around making sure that we allow for utilization of discretionary budget to enable our people to do that has been really successful for us. So I actually just recently returned from an onsite in Toronto with a good chunk of our engineering and product organization that came together to do planning for the first half of 2026. And of course, during that time, it was also a great time to build connections with some new staff that came into the team, not just the people that were on site, but in our Toronto hub, and making
Right.
sure that we were building those connections. So that would not have been possible if we didn't have a more progressive approach to discretionary spend and utilization of those budgets to allow for that to happen. So that's been a huge success for us. And it's something that I encourage other organizations to be thinking about, especially when you're in this hybrid space, to make sure that you are creating that experience for your remote staff to be able to come together and to work, like I mentioned, very intentionally, very thoughtfully.
It's great. And, you know, I think a lot of times some of our listeners might be like, oh, well, that's great for you, Dustin. You guys, obviously have budget to be able to do that. But, we had to cut budget. I think sometimes you can actually cobble other budgets to kind of do some of these things. We've had a good amount of people on calls where, there's a travel budget for professional development. People still need to go to conferences. Salespeople still need to go meet people. Like all of us still need to personally develop. So we had a team where they would all go to a conference, one of their big industry conference, and instead of just going to the conference to be an attendee, they would schedule the day before that big conference to at that conference location to do the retreat. So it's almost, you have to spend the money to go there already. You already have a team that's going there. You can get really creative with budgets that are not going to get eliminated because it's an essential business function, and kind of cross-pollinate there. So there are some creative ways that you can do that. Question: who in leadership ensured that the budgets were there? Like, how does that happen, right? Because a lot of times the budgets are just done. How did that come about to be able to keep that?
Yeah, it's exactly that, Kaleem. It's the entire executive team realizing that there is so much benefit in creating those in-person connections and finding those ways to enable co-working when and where it makes sense. The last thing that we want to do is be performative in terms of an in-office mandate or an RTO, 5 days a week. So the entire executive team has been very much bought into that. And of course it's budget, but then it's also about talent acquisition strategies and making sure that we're able to attract best-in-class talent. And especially as we're in the state that we're in today, where we're seeing more and more larger tech organizations mandating, 3, 4, 5 day RTOs, a lot of their really great talent who have grown accustomed to having the flexibility of working from the comforts of their home offices don't want that. So it's also allowing us to attract great talent. Yeah, when they're not wanting to be sitting in an office, they don't want to spend 2 hours a day commuting in and out of a downtown core to do the exact same work that they could do from their home office. And probably reinvest some of that time back into their work rather than commuting to continue to deliver great results for an organization and simultaneously have time with their families, do the things that fill their cups outside of work. So I think the entire executive team very much is aware of that and realizes the benefit to the business by being really protective of that budget line. And one thing I want to flag from your mentions before, Kaleem, around, oh great, you have the budget for that. That doesn't negate the fact that we're also being cost conscious. We,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
every business, need to be very intentional around our discretionary spend and our run rate. And for us, it's about prioritizing the things that are going to move the needle forward. And we have realized the benefit of bringing people together. Sometimes when you are able to get people in a room and you like lock the door shut and you give people that time to just norm and storm together, sometimes can be worth the investment because you come out of that and you hit the ground running in full alignment across a team of people. So while it may not work for other organizations, for us, it's been really important for us to make sure that we have that budget allocation to do exactly that.
Geez, I'll say this, Dustin. Kudos to your CEO, kudos to all the executive team, because the amount of self-reflection that this takes, especially if you are someone who just doesn't believe. I mean, you told me prior to the pandemic, this company was an in-office company. In order for your leadership to reflect on everything that they've known, everything on how they've kind of excelled to the top. And then you said something that really hit me. It's you have to be cost conscious yourself, like, hey, it's not like this endless money on a Intellistack, people. They're a company too. But you know what you said? You said something that really aligns with this show. You all have prioritized people. You have prioritized the human at the workplace. So kudos to you, because you're sacrificing. There's sacrifices in other places. There definitely are. But the fact that you all say, hey, no, 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 no. It takes a lot of emotional intelligence from your executive leadership team to be able to say, hey, we know other people are prioritizing this thing over that, but we're going to stick to the people. So kudos. All right. So it sounds like you have some pretty good successes there. Recruiting is pretty good for you. Engagement because you have a budget. If you could go back in time in a DeLorean or a different time machine, maybe a hot tub time machine,
I
what
love that.
would you tell your younger self? What piece of advice would you tell your younger self regarding the employee experience in people operations? What would you tell yourself?
I think it would be reflective of the diaspora that I think tech saw in the height of the pandemic.
Okay.
And maybe being a little bit more prescriptive around just how far
Okay.
we would allow staff to self-relocate away from the hubs that had been pre-established pre-pandemic.
Okay. A little more perspective, a little more solid on like, hey, this is what we're going to do this, a little bit earlier.
Totally. I mean, I think of us at Intellistack, our hubs, Denver, Fishers, Indiana, Toronto, Los Angeles, Krakow. Pre-pandemic, going into the early part of the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, the diaspora of people away from those hubs. And sometimes we would see someone who was like, you know what, I'm going to move to Spain, or I'm going to move to Asia. In hindsight, probably not the most beneficial to the business to have someone that is so completely removed and isolated from the rest of the organization. So, like I mentioned, in hindsight, I think being a little bit more prescriptive around just how far the business would allow and enable people to move away from those locations. Like I mentioned, people hubs, that's really important to us, but even just relative proximity within time zone to make sure that we're enabling really, really thoughtful collaboration during the course of the working day can be made inherently difficult when you've got a team primarily co-located and maybe you've got one person that's sitting over in Hong Kong, or you've got one person who's sitting over in Europe and the rest of the team is on the West Coast. So I think that for me would be something that's very much top of mind. And it's showing up for us today in our talent acquisition strategies with these people hubs. Not to say that we wouldn't if there's someone who's incredible.
Of course.
And they're going to be a huge addition to the business, both strategically, but also culturally.
Always
and maybe they're a little bit removed. Totally.
Yeah.
Exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
But, one of the things that my former leader used to say all the time was, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think, like I said, being a little bit more mindful of that is something that I would be telling myself for sure.
Totally get that, man. The pandemic, everybody was reactive towards workplace flexibility and their plan. We go back in time in Dustin's hot tub, like Dustin's going to be like, hey, before we let everybody do anything, why don't we take a moment to look at the whole remote employee experience, what our social connections are going to look like, and let's really, really, really be intentional about the whole program before we just go ahead and let people on. That's why, you notice all the fully remote companies before the pandemic, they were all just like, hello, hello, because they already had all of those things already in place because they were intentional about their workplace design. Whereas it seems like you all did an amazing job adapting your workplace design into something more flexible. But, as you're adapting on the fly, you learn some tough lessons. So I can applaud that piece of
and one
advice.
thing, no, I appreciate that, Kaleem. And I mean, one thing to acknowledge as well too is the market that we were all collectively navigating in the early part of the 2020s. It was difficult to hypothesize, where we were to where we would be 5 years from where we were then. And organizations were pivoting their strategies every day. And it became such a competitive market that, of course, an organization is going to maybe make some radical decisions around their strategies to retain great talent and to attract great talent that in hindsight, and being reflective, might not have been the most beneficial to the business long term, especially when trying to manage or reset expectations with those people that were in the business or coming into the organization. So fully acknowledge that where we were then is very different from where we are today.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think being flexible is important. And while, yes, I would give myself that advice, it's about finding the balances and feathering, I guess. Yeah, feathering around, being rigid, being flexible, and finding the right balance between those two states.
For sure. Well, Dustin, this has been awesome, man. It's been a really great show. So many great things. You can tell that you're passionate about the human experience. So this is really cool. I know I'm going to see you around some more because we're in the same circle, sir. So appreciate you. Where can our listeners and viewers find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, I mean, the best place is LinkedIn. So definitely get connected with me on LinkedIn. Thinking a lot about, especially as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, finding this balance around the world of AI, emerging technologies, and the work that we're doing. So I'm going through a lot of self-discovery right now around integration of AI and emerging technology into the people space. So if you're curious about the experiences that I'm having, I'm throwing a lot of learns, lots of wins, lots of failure on my LinkedIn. So definitely get connected with me there. I would love to share ideas, experiences, wins, fails with your audience for sure.
Website address? What's the website?
You can find Intellistack at intellistack.com.
Awesome, man. Dustin, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I made it through that whole show without calling you Justin, I hope. So, I mean, I'm sure you get that call all the time, man.
You wouldn't be the first time. So you did a great job, Kaleem.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you. Everybody else, thank you for joining us. Please be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon. Peace.